There was a time when friendship occupied a deeper place in human life, not as networking, not as entertainment, not as occasional contact maintained through reaction emojis and disappearing messages, but as something closer to emotional shelter, a place where people could arrive unfinished, confused, honest, unimpressive, and still feel understood.
Now many people have more social access than any previous generation in history. Hundreds of contacts, constant communication, group chats that never sleep, infinite opportunities to remain loosely connected. And yet, loneliness spreads through modern life with almost architectural precision. Not always dramatic loneliness, sometimes it appears as something quieter, the feeling that nobody truly knows you anymore. Not completely, not beneath the surface layers. Modern friendship often creates the illusion of intimacy without requiring the conditions that real intimacy depends on. Because deep friendship is not built through constant connection, it is built through sustained presence, and presence has become increasingly rare.
You can feel this shift everywhere. Friends meeting while half checking their phones. Conversations interrupted every few minutes by notifications. Relationships maintained primarily through memes, short updates, and passive interaction. Communication has increased, but communion has weakened.
People know what each other consumed, what they posted, where they traveled, what mood they hinted at online, but they often no longer know the texture of each other's inner worlds. The fears nobody posts about, the private grief, the confusion, the emotional contradictions that only emerge during long conversations without performance. Modern life keeps people socially visible while emotionally hidden. And this creates a peculiar kind of isolation. A person can be constantly perceived while rarely feeling deeply seen. Part of the problem is speed. Deep friendship requires slowness, time, repetition, unstructured interaction, shared boredom, long conversations that wander without agenda. But modern adulthood increasingly fragments all of these conditions. People move cities frequently, work consumes attention, digital life crowds silence, schedules tighten, exhaustion becomes permanent background noise. Friendship gets squeezed into leftover space, and leftover space rarely sustains emotional depth.
You can see the consequences in the language people use now. We should catch up some time. A phrase spoken endlessly and fulfilled almost never. Because many people are not avoiding friendship intentionally. They are psychologically overwhelmed.
Modern life consumes enormous emotional bandwidth. Work stress, financial anxiety, information overload, constant stimulation, personal optimization, family pressure, digital fatigue. By the time many people finish surviving the day, they have little emotional energy remaining for genuine closeness. So relationships become lighter, more convenient, less demanding, and convenience quietly reshapes intimacy. Friendships become curated around low emotional friction, sending content instead of vulnerability, reacting instead of talking, checking in without truly opening up. Surface connection expands while emotional depth contracts. Not because people stopped caring, because modern life increasingly trains people to avoid emotional heaviness. There's an unspoken pressure now to remain manageable, easygoing, low maintenance, emotionally efficient. Many people fear becoming burdensome, so they keep difficult feelings private. They say, "I'm fine." They joke through pain. They disappear quietly during hard seasons. And over time, this creates friendships where everyone remains partially hidden from one another. Polite emotional distance disguised as closeness. The tragedy is that human beings do not actually heal through constant self-containment. We heal through being known, not admired, not optimized, just known. But deep friendship requires something modern culture increasingly struggles to tolerate: vulnerability without performance. And performance now contaminates many social interactions. Even friendship can begin feeling subtly curated. People present edited versions of themselves, carefully controlled identities, digestible emotions. The internet trains people to package personality into something legible and socially safe. But real friendship depends on messiness, contradiction, awkwardness, emotional unpredictability, the parts of a person that cannot easily become content. That's why some of the most meaningful conversations happen late at night, when people grow tired enough to stop performing themselves completely, when the social armor loosens slightly, and suddenly someone admits they are afraid, lonely, lost, heartbroken, confused about their life. Those moments feel sacred because they cut through modern social choreography. For a brief moment, two human beings stop managing perception and simply exist together honestly. But those moments are becoming rarer, partly because modern culture increasingly rewards self-sufficiency above interdependence. People are encouraged to become independent, emotionally regulated, self-contained. And independence has value, but hyper-independence often masks fear. Fear of needing people, fear of rejection, fear of emotional exposure.
Deep friendship requires dependence in small human ways. The willingness to inconvenience each other sometimes, to ask for help, to remain present during difficult seasons instead of disappearing. But many people now feel uncomfortable with emotional reliance entirely. So relationships remain emotionally lightweight, pleasant, functional, but fragile.
Another reason deep friendship struggles today is that modern adulthood lacks shared structure. Previous generations often built friendships through repeated physical proximity. Neighborhoods, religious communities, local gatherings, long-term workplaces. Modern life dismantled many of these environments. Now friendships require deliberate maintenance instead of naturally recurring contact. And deliberate maintenance becomes difficult in lives already saturated with demands. Especially because digital connection creates the illusion that relationships are being maintained more deeply than they actually are. Seeing updates from someone is not the same as sharing life with them. Passive awareness replaces active participation. You know what someone posted last week, but not what they fear at 3 in the morning. And perhaps one of the saddest parts of modern loneliness is that many people no longer expect deep friendship to be possible in adulthood. They quietly accept emotional isolation as normal. Work acquaintance, casual socializing, occasional group gatherings. But very few relationships where someone truly witnesses the evolving reality of your life over years. Someone who remembers old versions of you, who notices subtle changes in your voice, who understands your silences without needing explanation. Those friendships still exist, but they increasingly feel rare enough to seem almost accidental. Partly because deep friendship requires commitment without clear social rewards. Romantic relationships receive cultural importance. Careers receive status. Family receives obligation. Friendship often receives whatever remains. Yet some of the most psychologically protective relationships in human life are friendships. Not transactional alliances, not networking, not curated social circles. Real friendship. The kind where conversation survives silence, where vulnerability does not require polishing first, where presence matters more than performance. Modern culture severely underestimates how much emotional nourishment comes from simply being deeply understood by another person. Without that understanding, people begin carrying their inner lives alone. And human beings were never designed to carry everything alone. You can almost feel the consequences collectively now. People starving for intimacy while fearing vulnerability, wanting connection while avoiding emotional risk, surrounded by communication yet deprived of closeness.
And perhaps the deepest irony is that many people are performing independence while secretly hoping someone notices they are struggling. But noticing becomes harder in a culture built around distraction. Attention fragments, lives accelerate, conversations shorten. Friendship requires attention, not constant attention, but intentionally attention. The willingness to slow down enough to perceive another person fully, and slowing down has become strangely countercultural.
Even social interaction now competes against endless digital stimulation. A quiet evening with a friend struggles against algorithms engineered to capture attention more efficiently. Modern entertainment often replaces communal experience instead of supporting it. People consume together less, sit together less, talk without distraction less, and something ancient in human psychology weakens because of it. Because friendship is not merely emotional preference, it is biological, evolutionary, existential. Human beings historically survived through social bonds. Isolation stresses the nervous system profoundly, not only physical isolation, emotional isolation, the feeling that your inner world remains fundamentally unwitnessed. That feeling changes people over time. They become more guarded, more detached, more performative. Because vulnerability without safety eventually feels dangerous. And perhaps this is why many people now feel nostalgic for forms of connection they barely even experienced themselves. Long dinners, slow conversations, communities where people remained involved in each other's lives naturally. Friendships built through repeated shared existence instead of scheduled maintenance. There is a grief hidden inside modern adulthood. The grief of scattered friendships. The grief of emotional distance. The grief of realizing how difficult sustained closeness has become, especially as people age. Responsibilities multiply, time shrinks, energy fragments, and yet the hunger for connection never disappears. If anything, it deepens. Because success without intimacy eventually feels hollow. Productivity cannot replace companionship. Entertainment cannot replace belonging. Visibility cannot replace being known. And maybe rebuilding deep friendship begins with accepting something uncomfortable. Real closeness is inefficient. It takes time, repetition, patience, emotional risk. You cannot optimize intimacy. You cannot speedrun trust. Deep friendship forms slowly, almost invisibly, through accumulated moments of honesty and shared reality. A long walk, a difficult conversation, helping someone move apartments, sitting together after heartbreak. Years of ordinary interactions layered quietly on top of each other. This kind of connection cannot fully exist inside constant distraction. It requires presence, and presence is expensive in modern life. But perhaps it is expensive because it remains one of the few things that still feels truly human. To sit with someone without performance, without multitasking, without carefully managing perception, just two nervous systems sharing reality honestly for a while.
Maybe that is why deep friendship feels increasingly sacred now. Not because human beings changed fundamentally, but because modern life keeps pulling people away from the conditions intimacy depends on. And still, beneath all the noise and distraction and emotional exhaustion, the desire remains. To be understood without needing to explain everything. To feel emotionally safe with another person. To stop carrying your inner life alone. Because no matter how advanced society becomes, some ancient part of the human soul still longs for the same simple thing. Someone who truly knows you and stays. That's all for today. As always, thanks for watching. If you like content like this, please consider subscribing. See you in the next video, and until then, stay free and unique on your journey to your personal true north.